So that was an incredible film. Let's give it all up again for Mona.
I also want to mention there were a few people besides Mandy who came out from Columbus to work on portions of the film, and if there are any people out here, I'm hoping they'll stand up and be recognized. You can move
Can everybody hear Mona in the back? Okay, great. Awesome. So yeah, you made this incredible film like during the past 11 months, aka during this most violent and egregious ramp up in the genocide of our people. Notice I didn't say start, I said ramp up, because this genocide has been going for 76 years. What has it been like creating a film and being a creative person during the time of genocide against our people?
I should probably throw that question back to you, but I'll try and start things out here. Just existing in this time is exhausting, and I think you'll agree with that. As far as creating, I don't know, my feelings are mixed about creating work like this in a time of genocide, and I'm not sure that anything I do is going to have an impact. Maybe not now, maybe in the future, I don't know. That's questionable. The only thing I know for sure is it's keeping me sane. Yeah, the only way I can stay sane while I'm listening to everything that's happening in Gaza and the West Bank is by making. And you also have been, creating a body of work during this period. How do you feel about it?
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's definitely what's keeping me sane. I hate to say, if I didn't have my creativity and my art and a supportive community around me, I probably would not be here right now. That's not an exaggeration. Check on your Palestinian friends. We're not okay. And yeah, I also got to be creative for an entire week at your place, the art gallery you saw in the documentary. I got to do a residency there for a week, and just being in this place where Palestine is all throughout the gallery, like in Mona's home upstairs, all throughout the gallery. And you just feel it's like a warm hug, in a good cozy blanket. That's how it felt. And stuff like that keeps me sane, because it's like a mix of art and community, and I'm extremely grateful for that. I also wrote 10 poems at Mona's place, 10 entire complete poems in a week, which is nuts. And it just goes to show, what can be done in a supportive, loving environment, even when it feels like everything around you is crumbling.
Right. I kind of wanted to back up for those of you that are not aware. I lived in Columbus for a decade before moving to Western Ohio and purchasing a place where I could have a live workspace. I called it Gazala Projects, and yes, it is mostly devoted to creativity that is, Palestine positive. It's a place where you can walk in and know that, you can talk about Palestine, you can make art about Palestine, you can discuss Palestine, and you're in a safe place. And I realize that's an odd thing to have, in the middle of a small town in Western Ohio, but the circumstances were right for this place. So even though it's kind of an oasis, it's a safe space for me, and hopefully for other people who visit.
Yeah, and I wanted, since we're giving people kind of a little bit of behind the scenes, We should tell them about our visit to the Garst Museum,
Oh,
where
yes.
all the Lowell Thomas stuff was. Do you want to tell them about
Sure.
that?
Let me just say, what you saw tonight was about 45 minutes. I am still working on this film and working through the pieces of the puzzle. In case you didn't gather by the end, Lowell Thomas's birthplace was in Darke County, Ohio. And that is why you saw that some of the things that he collected during his career as a broadcaster made their way to the Garst Museum in Darke County. And hopefully over the next couple of months I'll be able to add another possibly 30 minutes to the film to kind of complete the story. And I'm sorry, back to what you were discussing.
Oh, I was gonna say, like we went and we tried to go and get footage
Yes.
during my residency, and like tornadoes had just ripped through western Ohio, and like most of the building was totally fine, but that one wing with all the Palestine stuff and the Lowell Thomas stuff was just wrecked. Thankfully, all the artifacts are fine, but we weren't really able to like see anything or interact with it in a
Right.
normal museum setting because there's just ceiling on the ground.
Right, that was a kind of an interesting glitch in my project. You know, obviously, like the kind of focus of the thing at the end of the trail is the surrender flag, and the fact that for most of the summer, that wing of the museum was closed down was kind of something I had to work through creatively. We were actually, they were actually nice enough to let us walk back and see the artifacts underneath all this protective plastic, but you know, obviously that wasn't an ideal time to shoot. So, yeah, definitely living in a very big tornado season didn't help with the progress of the film.
It was almost, I don't want to say poetic because I feel like that's dismissive, but like it's during this time of genocide, we're seeing Gaza ripped apart, and then we try to go to this museum to see Palestinian history, and it's ripped apart as well. And it just felt like this era of destruction was almost like following us in a way. Like, did you feel that too?
Yeah, it did kind of feel like there was, I don't know if you want to call it a curse. That sounds a little heavy, but yeah, there's just been a lot going wrong, obviously.
And what I find fascinating is that at the time you moved to Gettysburg, you had no idea Lowell Thomas was from Western Ohio. Like, I mean, I know you have the book that, he wrote about visiting Palestine, but like, this connection was not why you moved to the area. It was kind of like a surprise once you got there.
No, absolutely not. I had no idea that this artifact was there. You know, I chose this place solely on the fact that there was an affordable place for me to live and work. I didn't think there was anything of interest in the area, and just a lot of my artwork, as you may have noticed, is research-based. So I spend a lot of time doing Google searches and falling down rabbit holes online, and happened to come across this article about the existence of this flag, which just blew me away, that I would be in the same county as this item. Yeah, that definitely took me by surprise.
And how would you say that it's changed your relationship to the area? Like, do you feel almost like a sense of solidarity, like, yeah, there's other pieces of Palestine here, like I'm not the only one, or is it more, I don't know, how's it changed your relationship to the area?
I don't know that it's really changed my relationship so much as kind of solidified it as, the space of empire. Greenville, if you look it up, had a lot of colonial history attached to it. If you look up the Treaty of Greenville, which was the ceding of a lot of Ohio lands from the native peoples, happened right there. There was also a town called Longtown, which was multiracial. It was this flourishing settlement in the 1800s, and because of, racist, banking procedures, and, like people not being able to get loans, people losing their farms. Eventually that entire flourishing community went away, and we now have a county that's, 97% white. So, I mean, a lot of the landscape is racialized, and but the stories of Native Americans and the stories of Black Americans aren't my story, and I don't think I have the right to tell that. But, just having a piece of the dispossession of Palestine in this same landscape gives me a way to reach in and discuss the empire, discuss what kind of havoc we're wreaking, not only here but around the world.
Absolutely, and I'd be remiss if, in addition to Free Palestine, I didn't say land back for all, Free Congo, Free Sudan, Free Tigray, Free New Caledonia, Free Hawaii. Everybody that needs to be freed, we gotta free them. And so much of the discourse around our people is about our exile, so I would love to hear you talk about what it means to you to have carved out this space that is all your own, proudly pro-Palestinian, in a place where people might not think to find us.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. Obviously, always feel a little bit of a twinge of not being able to visit the place where my parents and grandparents grew up, but being able to build a little space that has meaning to me, centered around my parents and my grandparents' background, gives a little bit of that history back to me.
Absolutely. And how do you wish Lowell Thomas had told the story, or what can media professionals today do better in telling our stories?
Yeah, Lowell Thomas, I don't know if you all look him up or are aware of who he is, was a pretty famous broadcaster in his day, starting with radio and going into television. But obviously he had a very strong Western voice. And the mistakes he was making, I don't know if you picked up on some of the things as he was speaking in the film, are the same mistakes that are being made by Western media today. It almost seems as if there hasn't been any corrections or reckoning on that. So maybe this is something we need to discuss or change.
Oh yeah, whenever people ask me for examples of how Western media has so thoroughly failed Palestinians, I love to point to, I believe it was on CNN, they said, we invaded our own country. Tell me how the indigenous population invaded?
Right.
Okay. Get it together, Western media. But kind of pivoting a little bit, we saw you in the film making these concrete artworks for your spray painting place and power. Tell us a little bit more about that project's inception, you bringing it out of retirement and where it is now.
Okay. Yeah, Power and Place, as I mentioned in the film, is not a new work, but it is a work I created back in 2018 while I was still living in Columbus. And yes, the concrete definitely for me was reminiscent of the destruction happening in Gaza, but for me, I was living in Franklinton at the time, which is a gentrifying area, and there are so many parallels between like spatial justice issues happening here inside Empire as well as what's happening abroad, and that was the basis of the work when I made it. Now, the meaning and the feeling of being with Gaza right now is obviously much stronger. And I was recently invited to do a solo show at the university, the galleries of Ohio University in Athens. So that work, it has never been shown in its entirety in a gallery before, and I'm happy to say it is now showing at Ohio University. There is a reception happening a week from today, Thursday, I think it is the 12th, and the show is up through September 27th, so I hope you can visit.
Right on. And you told us a little bit about your plans for the film's completion. Tell us more, and also share how folks can get involved if they would like.
Yeah, one of the things that I feel is missing from the film are other voices. I'm not opposed to, doing monologues and talking about myself in the film. I mean, it is mostly a memoir, but I really want to bring in other voices and other opinions, whether those are people living in Dark County, like Gail Honeyman, or if there are Palestinians that would like to give me your reflections on this surrender flag and how you feel about it. And the reason in particular that I wanted to include Mandy's reflections on the surrender flag is to, suggest and invite other Palestinian Americans to be part of this film by taping yourself and bringing and giving me a collection of those reflections that I can integrate into the ending of the film. I'm also open to, if you have other suggestions, especially, Palestinian Americans I want to get involved in the completion of this film. If you can think of a way to reflect on this artifact or other artifacts, I'd love to hear from you with your suggestions. And you can always drop me an email and we can discuss it.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to share before I turn it over to audience questions?
No, let's have at it.
Okay. Does anybody have a question? I'm happy to run the mic out to you, or if you're comfortable yelling really loud, that is.
I also have a mic, so I'm happy to run a mic.
Nice.
Just raise your hand and I'll bring it to you.
What city or region are you from in Palestine, or is your family from?
My mother's family is from Ramallah. My dad lived in Rumley, and during the Nakba, his family, with a lot of other refugees, moved to Ramallah, and that's where the two of them met.
It's very likely that we're cousins. Like, very distantly related.
Both Ramallah people.
Yeah. Don't be shy.
Do you still have family in Palestine?
I don't think I have any direct family left in Palestine. Most of my family immigrated in the 50s and after.
Same, in case you want my answer too. It was like my grandfather and his sister and, his wife, my grandmother, all came together, and then slowly but surely it was, well, let's get, the sister's kids, and okay, let's get, these cousins, those cousins. And so before you knew it, over the course of like 20 years, all my immediate family was in Birmingham, Alabama, of all places. That's why I call myself a redneck Palestinian, because I've got the Southern accent, and you should really hear people with Southern accents try to speak Arabic. It's really funny.
I guess this is going to expose how little I know about the cultures around me, but I had never heard of the Brethren, and I was wondering, were the people depicted on the streets there, were they Amish or were they Brethren?
All of those people are brethren. We do not have any Amish people in this section of Ohio. And because so much of the film for me is my observations of everything that's happening around me, I feel I get a true sense of peace just from doing that, and I'm kind of sharing that through the film. And I think this is also why I didn't want to finish the film quickly. I get like just a sense of wholeness from going through the days, the pattern of the days and the pattern of the seasons, and I feel like it would not be right to rush it. But getting back to your question, the Brethren is a whole other sect, and that is why I wanted to invite Gail Honeyman to like explain what people are seeing when they're viewing the movie, and that like, no, this is not Amish, this is another German sect of, a German denomination that settled mostly in the Miami River Valley, there's a high concentration of them in the Gettysburg area, and it's a beautiful thing to see.
Funnily enough, when I was doing my residency, there was some kind of did you find out if it was a holiday?
I don't know. When I was speaking to Gail, he said like they usually have like once a month on a Sunday. Usually they have like a huge gathering of congregations. But when you were there, there seemed to be some sort of wedding festival celebration going on because.
Every 10 minutes there was a horse and buggy going through, and so I wrote a lot of poems to that like really delightful like clop 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 sound. So if you ever go out to Mona's place, which I highly recommend, it is extremely peaceful in part for that reason.
So I've been thinking a lot about this scene of the robin tapping against the glass, and I was just like I just emotionally moved me in ways that I wasn't expecting. I was wondering what that scene symbolizes to you, or why you felt that you included it. Yeah.
Again, in the same way that I observed the Brethren passing by under my window, and I observed the tractors and the hay trucks and everything else going on, also nature. So yes, this robin just came to the window and was either enamored or angry of its reflection. I couldn't quite tell, but it wouldn't go away. And I just thought that was a beautiful thing, and maybe it spoke to you in the same way I see it upon reflection. Is it feels like somebody trying to get a message to you, and maybe hitting a barrier while trying to communicate. And I think a lot of Palestinians feel that way.
And just for a kind of brief interlude, I would love for you to share with the audience about your other film, Closeness to the Land, which is much shorter, but still has some of the same themes about nature and Palestinians in particular relationship to nature. I would love for you to just tell the audience about that film and some of the themes, because I see how it relates.
This film is obviously a much longer film. If you were here for last year's viewing, was it My Eye Has No Iris? Is that what we did show the film short that I had called Closeness to the Land. It has to do with a jump I made around the year 2000 into really wanting to connect with nature and feel closer to the agricultural life and the natural life, because I was drawn to something that would give me a sense of peace and a sense of connecting with my grandparents, who lived in a much simpler time in Palestine, where they grew their own food and grew fig trees and raised chickens, and being in a rural space in Ohio really gives me a proxy sense of what it might have been like to stay in Palestine. And the first film short I did really kind of goes into this in a little more succinctly than this movie does. It also involves a lot of text art, but I don't know quite how to explain what it is I said in that movie, but basically it is just trying to find a connection to Palestine through being in rural Ohio, and obviously they're not the same, but this is as close as I'm going to get in my life. So that's just me reaching back for something that my grandparents experienced.
Yeah, thought it might add to the answer about the robin. And I think another lovely human has a question.
Yeah, thank you. So I think one of the scenes that spoke to me the most when you're talking about wildflowers in Palestine, and then you also showed shots of wildflowers in Ohio. And I was wondering if when you were doing that, were you thinking about kind of, or is there a connection to a message about kind of, I guess, the ecological colonization? I don't know if that's really a word, but just like the way that, you know, the wildflowers, both in Palestine and in the Americas, are just like being diminished and being replaced by invasive species and species just from other places that are taking over, eliminating virgin forests, etc.
Yeah, I don't know if that specifically was my message, but I mean, definitely, again, that was me trying to make a connection between Palestine and where I was living now. It really is just kind of an astral projection, I think, is the way that Layla once put it.
Thank you both so much. Speaking about Gazala projects just makes me think about the significance of gathering for Palestinians right now. And I'm wondering if you could both speak to the differences between kind of gathering at the kind of backroads of empire compared to gathering here. And I'm very grateful to Layla. I wasn't here last year, but filmmaking space in this building, in this town, in this city, in this university for this gathering. But I just, maybe just speak to what is possible in those backroads compared to what happens at the heart of the state capital.
How to start? Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town in rural Alabama. My CETA had to work closer to Birmingham, so I got exposure to the city, when I'd go visit. But I feel like, so much of the pervasive messaging is like, oh, Palestinians are over there. They're across the ocean, they're far away. They couldn't possibly be in rural Ohio or rural Alabama. But I feel like you find your people, and even if they don't share your identity, maybe because they love you, or you've been able to share with them why this is so important to me, they want to gather around you. And I feel like that's just as important, as a massive protest, because really what it comes down to is a sense of community and solidarity. And I feel like finding that wherever you are is very literally life-saving. I don't know if that quite answers the question, but having a gathering around me is certainly what's kept me here.
Yeah, I mean, having a gathering here or, in rural Ohio where, I feel relatively safe in this group. Feel relatively safe in this gathering, and that's a rare thing, especially these days. So I want to, first of all, thank you all for being here and, making this gathering possible. A lot of what I talk about in rural Ohio, also in this movie, is just, I get a sense when I hear other people around me talk about Palestine. As I said in the movie, they make it sound like it's something so far away. When in fact, everything that is being enacted on the Palestinian people, it originates here. And this is not the first artwork I've done discussing this. In Dark County, we had Lowell Thomas, who kind of put the Western spin on the fall of Jerusalem. I did a residency back in 2018 in Peoria, Illinois, where I brought a piece of destroyed Palestinian home from Bethlehem and performatively wafted around the Caterpillar corporate headquarters because they were building the D9s that are destroying those self-same houses. And we here in Ohio, in Heath, Ohio, we have a Boeing plant that is creating weaponry that's destroying the Palestinian people now. It's literally 9 minutes away from the Great Circle, which we've expended so much energy trying to preserve indigenous, architecture and history. So, I mean, the closeness of these things to us is just kind of staggering. I think so. A lot of what I do in my artistic practice is remind you that violence is not just happening there; it's originating here.
I really appreciated the sequence with Shunnarah, like the favors singing about "We Will Return" overlapped with like the invasion. I thought that was a really powerful sequence and all the musical decisions. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about like your choice for soundtrack.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time. I feel like this entire movie is a very complicated collage. So I do spend a lot of time sorting through songs, sorting through bits of video, sorting through imagery that I've recorded. That song was just about returning to the homeland, which, I think quite a few of my choices in this film were, sad, romantic, not horribly upbeat. And I think that's kind of a reflection of the time we're living in. I feel hope somewhere inside of me, but the prevailing feeling is sadness, grief.
Do you want me to?
I was, one aspect that I particularly loved is the signage and the symbolism associated with it. First idea is simple but powerful. The connection to Edward Said is also very meaningful. The symbolism that I took out away from it relates to the initial use of the signage as a transient, like it's hand carried. And eventually there are planted signs like there's stakes in the ground. And there's an element of permanence. So I wonder if you can tell us more about these ideas. But also I'm curious whether they're still there and how are the people potentially relating to them, if they're still there, and kind of reaction to all of that.
Right.
And especially that they're kind of abstract, like they're not, the messages on them are not necessarily obvious.
Unless you read the entire quote together, yes, you will not, perceive what it's actually talking about.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a question. I have not permanently affixed these things in the ground anywhere. I, have a weighted stand that I took around to do these shoots. So they were never in any place for too long. That being said, especially when I had that last sign up that talked about these are the atoms that construct the tragedy of Palestine. I take that out into the world, and especially in Gettysburg, Ohio, to do a shoot, and I don't know who's going to pass me and what the reaction is going to be. So it's a little bit scary. I haven't had any negative reactions so far. Mostly people go by and are not really conceiving what's happening. To them, it's a road sign, and they don't pay very much attention to it. And that's part of it too. It's an innocuous thing. It's in the landscape, and you kind of have to look for it. So that is kind of the metaphorical sense of trail markers. Everything that is in our American landscape that is leading to the dispossession of the Palestinian people is there. You just have to hunt it down and follow the threads that tie this whole thing together.
Anybody else?
I think we have one more question.
sorry for asking two questions. I'm curious about the Tecumseh Trail and your like if you were thinking through Tecumseh and the legacy of Tecumseh and pan-indigeneity in that regard, and how that came up as you were making the film.
Yeah, so it is literally called the Tecumseh Trail. You know, it's named after Tecumseh, as a lot of things in my area are. As a matter of fact, Tecumseh and his brother, who the brother's name is escaping me at the moment, but they camped on the Greenville Creek for 3 years, I think, between 1805 to 1808. Somewhere in there, they camped with an entire pan-indigenous group of people for 3 years in protest of the Greenville Treaty. That happened right in my county. So obviously the name is significant. The fact that people have assigned Tecumseh's name to things now, years after he's gone and isn't a danger anymore, to me I see as kind of an irony. The same thing is happening, you know, it's like we worship the indigenous warriors of the past who can no longer threaten, you know, colonial encroachment, but when it's happening in the here and now, we vilify them. This, you know, the story of Tecumseh, I don't feel is something that, you know, I should be telling myself. That's something that Native people should be speaking on, but yeah, definitely including, you know, including information about the racialized landscape is important to kind of insert into the film, yes.
Thank you so much. I think that's a beautiful place to wrap up. Thank you, Mandy. Thank you, Mona. Can we give them another round of applause for their work?